welcome. I have Chad Busick with me. I'm excited to be talking with Chad today, where a lot of our focus is. He right now is talking a lot on championship mindset. And obviously, with everything that I've been talking about recently, you understand where our conversations have been going. And, I've talked with Chad before, and he's told me a lot about the direction he's gone with some of his trainings and the background he has. And so I know he's going to add some value to what we're going to be talking about here. He's an author, he's a trainer, he's a coach. And Chad, please just add to that and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. And first of all, thanks for having me. I know we've enjoyed our conversations. I look forward to our conversation today and just sharing with your listeners as we go through this idea of a championship mindset. So, a little bit of background on me. I grew up out here in California. I grew up in the Central Coast. I always say that I lived in three of the worst places you would ever want to live. I grew up in the San Luis Obispo area. I went to college in the Thousand Oaks area, and I live in San Diego. So it's been a really, really rough go for me. But for me, I knew early on that I wanted to work with athletes on the mental side of the game. And my journey, my path, and maybe we'll get into it, wasn't exactly the straight path, right? There was some detours and some dead ends and a few other paths that went on. But, thankfully now working with athletes, working with leadership on corporate teams, just on this whole mental side, this whole championship mindset. That's why I named my company Championship Mindset. And on the sports side, we do stuff with advanced sports technology on the 7 fundamentals of mental toughness. I'm also a certified trainer with the Jon Gordon Companies with the power of positive leadership. And then a lot of my own content, including my book. So I'm kind of all over the place, but it does all come back under this idea of mindset, a championship mindset, leadership, team development.
Excellent. Thank you. And I'll give you a chance at the end to talk more about your website, social media and whatnot, and especially your book. But just to make sure we're plugging that early, that's the Rock Tumbler is his book. I've got it. It's great stuff. So yeah, we'll talk more about that. But, first of all, where I want to start is a conversation I have with a lot of people like you and I in our field talking about, because one thing I see over and over is we're all passionate about sports. And I think why we do what we do is because sports translates over into so many other areas of our lives, into our family lives, our daily lives, our businesses, our executives, whatever it is. There's such a tight relationship and we can transfer that over. Do you want to just talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe in the work that I do on the sports side. I always like to say that the sports is the window that opens up the opportunities to help athletes, coaches, players achieve success both on the field and in life. And if I came into a bunch of high school or college players and said, "Hey, I want to help you get better grades. I want to help you be better in your relationships," they're not going to have any time for me, right? They're just going to be like, sorry, not today. But if I tell them I'm going to help them be a better basketball player, help connect more as a team, now all of a sudden I have their attention. And the cool thing about it is the very same things that help players and teams excel on the court are also many of the same skills that help them succeed in all areas of their lives. So that's what, and I wanted to address this, because we hear this word passion a lot. And, the Passion Paradox was a book that was written recently by Brad Stolberg and Steve Magnus. And I love the idea. And I want to go deeper than just passion, right? Because you and I may have different passions. We may not share the same passions. I will never be as passionate about, rodeo and things like that you are in your background. But purpose is different. When we share our purpose, we can get behind and we can support each other's purpose, even though we don't have the same passion. So my purpose is to help others through their passion, right? I won't be as passionate about their individual sports, but the purpose is to drive them to this championship mindset.
Hey, athletes and parents of athletes. So much time, money, and effort is put into the physical aspect of your sport to become the best you can be. But the mental game, It's often neglected, and it's just as important as the physical game. In fact, it's usually the differentiator between the good and the great athletes. Come and join me in the Confident Athlete program where you'll learn to control your confidence, develop a powerful mindset, and unlock your full potential. Go to jeffheggie.com/confidentathlete to find out more. Yeah. And yeah, we are both passionate about what we do. We're passionate about sports. And I knew Chad and I were going to get along when I mentioned rodeo and he mentioned a hazer and knew what that was before I had to even explain what steer wrestling was. Yep. So explain what a champion mindset is.
Yeah. So in my work with teams over the last, 7-8 years or so, I really kind of got to this idea of, championship teams, championship players act and behave like champions long before they ever become champions. And really, winning championships is a byproduct of all these small things that they do that gave them the opportunity to be a champion. And so I kind of started looking at it and I said, what is that? What's the DNA that makes up this championship mindset? So I started plugging around a little bit and I kind of settled on the formula. And the top part is 6 items. It starts with talent, right? Any area that we're talking about, it really begins with talent. But as we know, when we look at the world of sports or in the world of business, talent alone is not going to be good enough. We're going to have to add these other things to it. We're going to have to add things like hard work, right? Things that we're going to do, it's going to be hard and we have to be willing to do the hard work. The next thing we have to add is we have to add attitude. Our attitude is everything, and the impact that we have and how we face the challenges and what we're doing. The next one is mental toughness. Things are going to be difficult. It's not going to be a smooth, sail. There's going to be rough patches and speed bumps and dead ends and all of those things. And we need the mental toughness to push past that. The next one is teamwork. And teamwork is interesting. When I put it in the formula, I've got some pushback from some of, quote, more individual sports like swimming and golf. And my point to that is that every one of us has a team around us. It may not be a traditional, softball team or soccer team, but we have a team of, family and friends and coaches and mentors that help us on our path that we're on. So making sure that we understand that we do not have to do this alone. We weren't designed to do life in silos. And then the last one happens to be passion. And we talked a little bit about that. And we get the wrong definition of passion sometimes. Passion we think of as like, if you're driving in the car, everything's cool. And then someone cuts you off, right? And you go from 0 to 60 really passionate really quickly. Or not anybody listening to this call, but coaches maybe on the sidelines, parents on the sidelines when it comes to referees. That's not really the right definition of passion. Passion is your ability to sustain effort over a long period of time. That's why players in college still play their game when many of their friends quit years ago. So the first top part of it is talent, hard work, attitude, mental toughness, teamwork, and passion. And then it's divided by 1. And this bottom part changes based on the sport. So let's take, for example, baseball, right? It might be 1 season, 1 game, 1 inning, 1 pitch, 1 practice, 1 play at a time. It's basically those things on the top divided by 1, and that's everything that we do in life. And I'll make 2 other quick comments about that. One of the things that I always tell people is notice what's not on the formula. Nowhere on the formula does it say anything about the number of minutes you play, the number of goals you score, how much money you make, if we're talking about business side, things like that. And that's because we believe that everyone can have a championship mindset, regardless of the role that they play on the team or in life. And that leads me to the last point, which is I believe while we're talking mainly about sports, this formula for success is a formula for success in all areas of our life. If we want to be a good husband, a good wife, a good spouse, excellent and excel in our careers, relationships, at the end of the day, it's our talent, hard work, attitude, mental toughness, teamwork, and passion into everything we do. So that's kind of the championship mindset formula.
I love that. And just so everyone's aware, at championshipmindset.org, you can find that diagram and go print it out, save it, whatever you need to, because I love that. So thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so we've talked about the championship mindset and the vision of it. How does someone go about, whether they're an entrepreneur, whether they're an athlete, coach, whatever they are, how do they go about developing that championship mindset?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's we talk about it I talk about a high performance thinking or high performance triangle, and it really is this dynamic of the championship mindset is the goal or the vision, right? The bottom right of the triangle is the actions and the behaviors that help you become that championship mindset. Those are things like we tend in the world to want to focus on all the results, right? And championship mindset actually says the results will take care of themselves if you focus on these things in the process. And then that gets back to the bottom left of the triangle, which is really the purpose, the why you want to excel or have a championship mindset in whatever area. Because at the end of the day, you could have an amazing goal and a championship mindset, but if it's not something that has value and has a meaning to you and your purpose, then as soon as things start to get rocky, you're going to give up on that goal, right? So defining that clear purpose. So I think that's really the two things I would say is the actions and the behaviors, focusing on the process, not the results, and focus on the why you want to achieve that.
That was actually something in your book, The Rock Tumbler, that I took from that I thought, that's a great point, is focusing on the process. There's so much value in focusing on that rather than the end results. So yeah, thank you. So tell me, what's a focus mindset?
So focus mindset, great question. And it's really my why, right? It's my purpose. And it's more than just a why, it's a purpose. It's what drives me. And, in today's world, there are so many things vying for our attention, and not just it's not even just a lack of having a championship mindset. It's all of the little distractions and things that can get in a way that pull us away from that focus that we want. So focus for me was Jon Gordon, Jimmy Page, and Dan Britton wrote a book years ago called One Word, right? And the idea behind it was you pick, instead of a New Year's resolution, you pick a word that you're going to live through for the year. So focus was my one word a couple of years ago. It has now become my life word. It's what drives me in everything. And so for me, focus is an acronym. The F stands for family. For me, it starts with being a good husband, a good father. I have two daughters who are in college. I got to be good for them first and foremost. Right. The O is for others. And that's being others focused with the groups, the teams, the people, the companies that I get to work with, focusing on their needs and what they do. And this comes kind of from the idea. Zig Ziglar had a great quote that, you can get everything in life that you want if you just help enough other people get what they want. And so that's where the others come from. The C in the middle is for Christ. My faith is really important to me, and that for me, to be not selfish, I have to have Christ, my faith, in the center of it. Otherwise, I won't be good for anybody. The U is for unseen. It kind of goes back to the results that, so much of the world tells us what we should focus on, job, status, money, all of those things. The unseen comes from a verse in 2 Corinthians 4:18 that we should focus on the things that are unseen, not seen. And then the last one, the S is for self. And that I need to take care of myself, spiritually, emotionally, physically as well. So anything that I do has to get filtered through that focus mindset. If it doesn't fit into one of those 5 areas, then I need to be intentional to be able to say no.
Yeah, I love that. And again, this isn't specific to a sport. It's not specific to a business. It's so applicable to whatever we're doing. So thank you. Now, one of the things that I see often is people that are going through the right motions, wanting to do the right things, trying to be successful, but they can't get past their own limiting beliefs. What's your advice on how people need to deal with and get by their own limiting beliefs?
Yeah, that's a great, and I think that goes back to this comparison issue that we have in the world today. And I wrote about it in the book. And, we're so focused on what everyone else is doing around us that we tend to lose focus of our own journey, our own path. And we're all on different journeys. We're all on different paths. And so when you get others focused in that negative way, you lose sight of where you're at and the path that you're on. And I think, James Clear wrote a book in Atomic Habits, and I love what he says about this. He talks about that, we all have limits. There is a natural limit on our ability in whatever area of our life, whether it's athletics or, work, whatever it may be. But his point is that we get so caught up in the fact that we have limits that we rarely exert the effort and energy required to get anywhere close to the ceiling of our capabilities. And to me, a championship mindset, the true measure of success is how close did you get to your ceiling, to your limit, right? I'll give you an example. A friend of ours, Chris Wondolowski, plays for the San Jose Earthquakes. And now Wando, as he's known, and some people may know him, he's best known for the guy who missed the goal in the 2014 World Cup that would have beat Belgium. Right. But very few people understand and know his story. When he came out of high school, he didn't have a single Division I scholarship offer, not one. He went to a small Chico State Division II school, had a good career, did a walk-on tryout with the Earthquakes. And then he was selected in the 4th round of the supplemental pick, right? Not even in the regular draft, in supplemental pick. And then the franchise folded. He had to move to Houston. At one point, he was working 3 jobs to be a professional athlete. And they traded him back to the Earthquakes. And in his first, I think it was 5 years in the league, he scored 7 goals in 5 years, right? That was it. And then he got a chance. He got his moment. And he went on, and they had some injuries, and they said, we don't have a choice. We're going to start him. And he scored a goal. Then they started him the next day, he scored another goal. And he ended up leading the league in goals that season. He now, 15 years later, is the all-time leading scorer in Major League Soccer history. He's got 166 goals, right? The reason I share that story is because when you look at Wando, he's not the fastest, he's not the strongest, he's not all these things. And people are like, how does he score goals? But when you look at someone like that, he walks away knowing that he absolutely got the maximum potential out of his given skill sets, right? That to me is a sign of success, and it's a sign of a championship mindset, not compared to what other people did, but what I did. What did I do with what I was given?
That's a great story to share for that, because there's so many, how many people that don't have that strong of a mindset would have kept at it and not said, all right, I've tried, I give up, and not reach that ceiling, not reach where they could have been. So that's awesome. Jumping around a little bit, but one of the things that you talked about in your book that I really like is Simon Sinek's idea of infinite and finite minded leaders. Do you want to just talk about that concept a little bit?
Yeah, I love that book. It was one of my favorite books from last year. And I just love the idea behind that. The way the world works, we think we're playing in this finite game. And his applications were much more directed to business and to leadership. But there's so many parallels that we can pull across into sports. And I look at, let's just take youth sports, for example, right? Parents on the sidelines, it just blows me away. And I get it. I know that there's no doubt in my mind that parents want the best for their kids, right? Because they wouldn't spend the amount of time and the amount of money and the amount of energy they spend chasing their kids all over, not just the area, but like multiple states for tournaments and all of those things. But we get so locked into what's going on right now, this idea that my success is determined by, I was talking to someone the other day, and they said that one of the parents told a coach that they count starts, right? Like that's something that they measure is starts. This is a finite mindset, right? We're thinking about today, this little window of this tournament or even this season. And we're not realizing that this infinite game, it's that full development, the full picture of what today has for them going forward. And I think it's just so important for us. We get so locked in on what we're doing right now, or we're so locked on what's next, that we fail to be able to connect the moments today to the larger, bigger picture.
I think that ties in a lot with goals as well. You talk about what's next. And I see that so often that people are setting goals and, they achieve a goal. And so they've got the next one set. And what they don't look at often is the fact that if you look back a year, 2 years into the past, you're actually living the goals that you had. You're living that dream that you had 2 years ago. And we're so focused on the what's next, we don't give appreciation for what we've actually accomplished.
Yeah, it's a great point. I'll give you an example. I'm fortunate to work with, a good amount of college teams from the Division I, Division II, Division III, and NAIA levels. And here's a great example, right? So many parents and players set goals to play their sport in college, right? They want, and that's a tremendous goal, and it's an amazing accomplishment because the percentage of players that play and become a college athlete is a really small percentage. So what we see is that it's a worthy goal, right? And we set the goal to be a college athlete. Well, how is that really working out for us? Because if we look at the transfer portal and what's going on and how many people are looking to want to change schools, or that wasn't the right fit. So we've set a realistic and a real important goal. But then what? Right? So what we always tell players is great, you set a goal to get to college. Now we need to set a goal to get through college. And that's where we need to be better, I think, of not just setting the worthy goal, but also finding the intermediate steps in there and to make sure that we're on track for that. And that if we do get the goal, we're going to be where we want to be. Sometimes we have to change the goal. And I think I was reading a book recently and it talked about too much grit, right? It was Range by David Epstein. And I think this is interesting because grit is amazing. And I love grit, especially working with teams. But sometimes we can have too much grit. Sometimes it's okay to release that goal in pursuit of another goal. Just because you set your mindset that you wanted to go play a Division I basketball player, that doesn't mean that because you make that goal that's the right fit. Maybe you would have been better off going, hey, this Division II or Division III opportunity is going to be a better overall fit for where I want to be going forward. So I think we have to look at both. Jon Gordon talks about it, having a telescope and a microscope, right? So the telescope being the long distance goal of what we want to achieve, but it's the intermediate goals that we need along the way to make sure that we're on the right path and not needing to maybe change that path a little bit.
Yeah. And, specifically with sports, I think a lot have that, oh, I've got to be D1 or nothing. I'm D1 or nothing. They don't understand that, it's not high school. It's not high school sport. It's a job. You're under contract and committed. And for some, that love of the game isn't there to be at that level, and they would enjoy themselves, do better in their education, looking at those other options.
Well, and I love that point. And it's actually my number one complaint of youth sports right now today is that it's this Division I or nothing. And I think we need to do a better job of educating parents, athletes, coaches, that it's okay. There are other opportunities, and it's more important to find the right fit for you. Do you want to go to a big school? Do you want to go to a small school? Do you want to be, rural, in a city? All of these things that have much more to do with just, playing your sport in college and your overall well-being and your overall, mental health. And I think we need to do a better job of that. I am on my podcast, my Championship Mindset podcast. I'm interviewing Bethenny Bowser next week. nobody knows who she is, right? She was the NWSL, National Women's Soccer League Rookie of the Year in 2019. She went to Spring Arbor College in an NAIA school that nobody has ever heard of, right? I mean, it's just, but here she is, the Rookie of the Year. And that's why, and I talk about it in the book, I want people to own their journey. It's your journey. It's not anybody else's. Find your path. Find and be okay with that path. And it's great that, we want to set goals. We want to get to our ceilings and get everything we can. But we got to stop looking around and trying to set our goals based on what everybody else thinks is what's best for us, because we see how that's working out just in the example of the transfer portal.
Yeah, right. All right. Let's look at it from the perspective of you're a coach, you're a manager, you're an entrepreneur, boss, whatever. How you can focus on developing your own mindset. You can help people develop theirs. What happens when you've got, lack of a better word, that sour apple, that one person that's not getting on the bus, that just isn't the fit? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we all are going to deal with difficult people in our lives, right? And I think one of the things that drives me nuts in the world today is we have this idea of a cancel culture, right? That there's no more like healthy conflict, right? It's either like we're at each other's throats, or if I don't like something, Jeff, that you said or something that you commented, well, I'll just cancel you. I'll unfollow you, and that'll be the end of it, right? And I think as leaders, we have to think differently about that, right? First of all, when we're dealing with negative people, I always like to say that typically a negative emotion, a lot of times is a secondary emotion. It's kind of like anger is a secondary emotion. A lot of times people say that they're angry, but there's some underlying other thing going on that's prompting them to, show it in anger. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to get curious. We need to kind of get in and question what's going on, and not just think that they're negative for the sake of being negative. Maybe there's something else in their family, in health situation, something like that may be contributing to it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we need to work. Sometimes we get so focused on that negative person that we lose sight of the bigger culture. So if we're in a work environment, we have one person that's really negative and the other, 10, 20 workers are good and positive. We spend too much time on that one person. Here's the great tip is we want to build the culture. See, if you create a really, really strong culture with all the people around you, it's going to be really, really uncomfortable for that person to continue being negative. So they're either going to get on board or they're going to find their way off the ship, right? They're just going to be like, this is not working for me. So the culture and focusing there. And then the last thing is we have to, before we just cancel them or cut them or, fire them or let them go, we have to know that we as leaders have done everything we can to help bring them along and conform them. And there's a lot of great examples of stories that people who were negative, and a lot of times it's because they're fearful, right? They're maybe fearful of their job. They're fearful. They're not sure of their status, their role, their responsibilities. And we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to transform them. Jon Gordon talks about it in The Power of Positive Leadership in his program, which is amazing. He has a whole lesson on confronting negativity, transforming, as he calls it, energy vampires, those type of things. So we have to do all of those steps first. And then if it doesn't work and we've done all those things, then yes, we may have to let them go. But that's got to be the last option, not the first option.
Right. Thank you. Now, one of the things that I believe is to really achieve the mindset that we want, to achieve the level of success in whatever field we're looking at that we want, we've got to put the proper success habits in place. Do you have, with yourself, with your clients, do you have routines, anything like that morning routines, evening routines, anything like that for the success habits that are needed to be successful?
Yeah, a couple for you here. First of all, one of the things that, and I forget which book it was from, but I think it might have been from, well, I don't want to misquote it, but the idea of stress plus rest equals growth, right? That's the formula for growth and success. And I think sometimes we get this worked around. We've got this, it goes back to kind of the idea of too much grit, right? I've got to keep working. I got to keep going. I've got to work, 12-hour days. What? No, someone else is working 14-hour days. So I'm going to work 14-hour days. And we get in this cycle that we just think we got to go, go, go in order to keep up. It doesn't work that way. And for us to truly be successful, and we talk about it in the Rock Tumbler, there has to be periods of rest. We have to have the stress plus the rest that equals the growth. And, so that's one thing. And so, for example, for me personally, one of my things is, I'm a runner. I grew up playing soccer, and we talked about goals earlier, so I'll share this story with you. So, after I stopped playing soccer, it was harder to just go out and run, right? And so I'd have periods of time where I would, get on a good roll and I'd, run for a couple months straight, and then I would take a day off, and then it was a week, and then it was a month. And then I said, well, that's not working. So I'm going to set a goal of running a half marathon. And so I set the goal, 3-month training program, did all the stuff, met my goal. And then I said, I'm going to take a day off. It was a week. It was a month. Like, well, that didn't work. So I said, well, I'm going to run a marathon. Right. And I did the whole thing, the program, ran the marathon, met my goal, and I'm going to take a week, become a month, the whole thing. So that didn't work out very well. Right. And so those success steps in the middle. And so a while back, a buddy of mine read an article about running streaks. And he said, hey, I'm going to do this. What do you think? Do you want to try it? So the goal was to run every day, 3 miles or 30 minutes every day for a year straight without missing a single day, 365 days. So I did it. I met the goal. Do you know what I did on day 366? Went for a run. Because I knew, because I knew that if I didn't go for a run, I would fall back into the same patterns over again, right? So it's the discipline. Jocko Willink and Leif Babin talk about extreme ownership, which is a great book. So many great practical lessons. And it's that discipline equals freedom. And we tend to think that discipline is like, oh, I got to do this. But it gives you, so fast forward to COVID, right? So I met that goal. I ran every day. Day 366, I ran again. And I kept running and I kept running. So in April, 2 months from now, it'll be 10 years in a row, every single day, not missing a single day of running, right? And
really,
it's an amazing streak. It's over 3,000 days in a row of running without missing a single day, right? And the thing I'm most proud about that is not that I've run over 3,000 days in a row. It's that all the days in the past that I wouldn't have run, that I ran and still made it happen. And here's why I share that story is because when I look at the events of COVID in this last year, that has been an absolute lifesaver for me, that I know for 30 minutes a day, I get out, I run, I clear my mind, I clear my head, I connect with nature, I incorporate gratitude into it. I do these practices that just gives me so much more in the rest of my day. It just refreshes and recharges me. So you asked about a practice. For me, that's the practice. And here's the cool thing about it. They've actually done research on walking and like a jog kind of thing, is when you walk or jog, it occupies just enough of your left brain, right? So that you don't trip, you don't get hit by a car, you don't, do those type of things, that it opens up the right brain, which is creativity and all those things. The book that you have there, the Rock Tumbler, I would say probably 85% of it was written, the concepts, the ideas were written on my daily runs, that it just thinking about the lessons and the way that it worked. And then I'd come home and I would write about it. But those practices, I think, is so important for us to find those things in our day. We all can understand the importance of, doing the phone calls, doing the emails, all those things. But sometimes it's those lesser things that actually can help us have a big impact, but it also helps us in those other areas as well.
All right. Well, that is amazing. I mean, just the fact of setting that goal and then doing, it starts with 365 and now you're 3,000. That's awesome. But
Yeah.
but it goes back to the old saying that, with success habits, the easy things to do are also the easy not to do. And I think it's what you've been able to accomplish is also the hard part about it is if on 366 you didn't go for a run, 367 would have been that much easier not to go for a run.
Yep.
And that pattern could have started. So
you're absolutely right. It's those going back to James Clear, the atomic habits, right? It's we are a product of the habits that we do on a daily basis. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's very cool. All right. You had mentioned something in there that I like how you address it in the book. And so I also just want to touch on that again too, is talk more about gratitude.
Oh, I cannot say enough about gratitude. I've seen some things through COVID. It's like, 2020 isn't a year to focus on what we don't have. It's a year to focus on what we have, right? And gratitude. I mean, think about this, and even through 2020, which has been an amazing, challenging year, right? Even in the midst of all of that, we have so much to be thankful for. And there are, and when I've been doing a lot of work with teams we've been talking about this concept of take change by the hand, right? And we really kind of go through the 5 stages of grieving, which is, from Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and it's, denial and anger and bargaining and depression and acceptance. And when you think about COVID, that's really what we've been going through. We're grieving the loss of the lives that we thought we were entitled to, right? The things that we got used to. Gratitude does some amazing things, and it helps. Actually, they've done studies. It actually kind of will help rewire your brain, right? And they've actually looked at things called like a gratitude visit, right? Where you actually intentionally go and visit someone and tell them what you're thankful for. They've actually said that it's one of the highest peaks that has been studied in psychology, the peak that our brain has and it's something that's beneficial not only for the person giving the gratitude, but it's also for the person receiving the gratitude. Here's the amazing thing about the studies they've done is that when you conduct a gratitude visit like that, 15-minute gratitude visit, they've actually measured the benefits of that up to 30 days later from that benefit of the gratitude. So I can't express it enough how important that's been to be able to be to not only, and here's the thing, gratitude, not only to be thankful, but to show gratitude, right? And I think that's really important because in the world today, it's a very selfish me first world, right? So I can be thankful. I'm thankful for this and this and this and whatever it might be. But do you show gratitude? Do you show that to others? Because now we're building those interpersonal skills, those connections. I read a stat the other day, and I don't get it exactly right, but the interviewed employees, and it was something like 80% of the employees say, 80% of the employers say that they deliver, appreciation to their workers on a regular basis. Okay. Then they went and interviewed the employees, and the employees said that less than 20% of the time did they feel that they were showed appreciation from their bosses. Where's the disconnect, right? That's a huge gap. Why is that the case? And so we just have to not only be able to show or be able to be grateful, but actually show the appreciation, show the gratitude as well.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. Now what I'd love for you to do, I'm going to share all of this in all my show notes and everything, but tell people where they can find you, where they can find the book, what it's about, and all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jeff, this has been awesome. It's been a great conversation. I'm looking at the time and it's like flown by, but it was like the times we've talked before, time gets away from us, which is awesome. So yeah, I would love to connect with your listeners. We're doing some talks right now supporting the book. So if listeners are interested in meeting with me, whether it's one-on-one training, whether it's with sports teams, whether it's with corporate teams. We've got all types of different things. You can go to our website, championshipmindset.org, check out the services page. You'll see things on the advanced sports technology. You'll see stuff on the power of positive leadership. And then you'll also see a tab there for the Rock Tumbler, which is the book that we've been talking about. The interesting thing about the Rock Tumbler is I started writing this book back in like November, December of 2019. This is well before COVID. And I just came across this idea. For those of listeners don't know what a Rock Tumbler is, it's also called a rock polisher. And what you do is you put rocks into this cylinder, you add water and you add grit, and you put it on the machine and it spins 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The entire process takes over a month. And the idea is that I've used it as a metaphor for life. Think about 2020. Does it feel like we've been living in a rock tumbler right now? I mean, just nonstop going all over the place, right? And the point of the book, the reason I wrote the book is that because, how we view the world and how we interact with the world greatly determines what we get out of the world. And the events of the rock tumbler can either chew us up, spit us out, leave us a shell of ourselves, or it can shape and mold us into the people that we're meant to become. And I think that to me is so important. I can't tell you how many times through this year, whether it's in media, social media, just in conversations, people have said, I just want to get through this. I just need to survive this. And I think that's the wrong mindset, right? I had a session with a group recently, and one of the people said, well, if you have to go through it, you might as well grow through it. And that's really the question of 2020 and COVID. Are we just going through it, or are we growing through it? And if we take a broader picture, that we should view our circumstances or COVID not as something that we just get through or survive, but it's something that helps shape and mold us into the people that we're meant to become. So the book is a fable. It's based on one of my runs, right? I come across two rocks, my friends Chip and Corey, and we follow them through the process of the rock tumbler. And there's three parts. There's the ingredients that go into the tumbler. There's the process that happens inside the tumbler. And then there's the results at the end. And through that, there are 16 life lessons that we can take from the rock tumbler and apply to our own lives. And so that's really it. But it's based on two primary truths. The first one is that our circumstances don't define us, right? And we need to understand that. Our circumstances, whether good or bad, do not define who you are, who you play for, or who you live for. But how you respond to those circumstances will reveal all of those things. Our response is everything in this moment, right? And the second thing is that when our identity is rock solid in who we are, there's an endless possibility of what we can become. But when we're focused on what we become, those results, right? It's an endless search for who we are. We get lost in that. And the final thing I would say is that we get so tied up in the past, right? And the thing is that we have to understand that our past does not have to define our present or determine our future. And just because you're not where you want to be right now doesn't mean that you can't get there. So you can also, it's a little synopsis on the Rock Tumbler. Feedback's been amazing. We are doing talks around that to support that. And then if you want to follow me on social media, you can catch me at Championship Mindset LLC for both Instagram and Facebook, and at champ_mindset for Twitter.
Excellent. And I will vouch for the book. Get the book. It's a great book. You can learn a lot from it. So make sure to get that. And, if you go to championshipmindset.org, that also has the links to all the social media. So make sure to follow them. I'll have it in the show notes. But Chad, thank you. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and experience with us. Thank you very much.
Jeff, thanks again for having me. It's been great, and look forward to connecting with you in the future again.
Excellent. Thank you. Are you an entrepreneur who wants to discover the breakthrough secrets that will produce the results you've been searching for, but you just can't seem to figure out why you keep working harder and harder and you're just not getting those results?
I want to tell you about a new challenge that I've created just for you, the Business Domination Challenge. If you want to create the entrepreneurial lifestyle and the business you dream of, then this is exactly what you're looking for. I created the Business Domination Challenge to show you how to grow your business exponentially and to become an optimal performing entrepreneur. What's an optimal performing entrepreneur? It's an entrepreneur who's succeeding in all areas of their life. If I show you how to build a successful business, but your relationships, your health, and everything else is falling apart, that's not a success. It's not about working harder, it's about implementing the correct principles and becoming the person who can do the things that produce the results. Hurry and go to jeffheggie.com/business domination and secure your spot today.